I have this hilarious article regarding DSA and Dr. Cornell West, but there's this debate and split among the DSA on whether they should support Dr. Cornell West or not. And the way that we explained this many times before is um, I'm glad to see the DSA and Justice Democrats, they bled a lot of support, but there are a lot of rank and file people that still go along with the party, and they haven't realized that they are agents of the Democratic Party. So you highlighted this earlier today. Dr. Cornel West's candidacy divides Democratic socialists. And then when you read the article, when you read the quotes, it's mostly rank and file people that's like, based on everything that we say, shouldn't we endorse Dr. Cornel West? Meanwhile, there's leadership that say, no. Well, technically that's true. Yes, we have Dr. Cornel West, who's technically an honorary chair of DSA. Do you guys know that?
Yes, yeah, he's a chair, honorary chair. Yeah.
He's an honorary chair of DSA, but there's DSA leadership and people in DSA that want to endorse Jim Crow Joe over him.
That doesn't surprise me one bit.
Doesn't surprise me either. I got a story about those people, DSA.
Yeah, I'm gonna read this quote and I'll pass it to Kit and Keaton. This is what CJ posted. I think this is good for the first part because I just want to make this real quick. While DSA has not made an endorsement in the race, the tension between lofty idealism and pragmatic politicking could once again be laid bare ahead of the 2024 cycle between supporters of West and those willing to accept the imperfect vassal of a Biden second term. So this is coming from this is the major debate in DSA. So we see what they choose, because to be clear, this still is ongoing. But the fact that this is even a debate, fam, what does that say? You got the socialists are debating whether they should endorse the strike breaker or the person who's an honorary chair of their organization. So they have a lot of rank and file confused. The people, once again, who are not on our level yet, but they haven't seen through the DSA leadership, and now they get confused about this. But Kid, I'll pass to you, and then we go Ken after that.
Okay, so let me just tell you about my experiences with DSA, especially at the height of their power after the Bernie Sanders movement. In 2018, they held their convention here in Chicago at the University of Illinois of Chicago. A huge, big convention. All it was talking and doing committee after committee, trying to get into the Democratic Party, having policy issues and so much more. It was nothing but talk from these people. All about just organizing, planning, having conversations and get together. Never follow through. Now, if you're a person who donates money to DSA, you're a rank and file member, you've been played. All right. I've seen DSA act. They've done nothing. They have done nothing for any kind of follow through. Yeah, there might be some small chapters here and there that are doing some good, but overall, the national movement of DSA is nothing but an arm of the Democratic Party. Look at your banner carrier, AOC, your front card person, 5 years in office. She's done nothing to deliver anything at all. Any kind of event that was hosted by DSA has never had any follow through, especially by the national movement. Now, are there some smaller chapters doing good? Yes, but congratulations. You are the exception. The overall general rule of DSA is do nothing and vote Democrat. So you have your own leadership telling you to support a guy, Joe Biden, who's been on the wrong side of history. You've been played. You've been sheepdogged by Bernie Sanders to go to DSA, and more or less you've been sheepdogged by your leadership to go to the Democratic Party. And if that offends people, then okay, fine. Living your lie. I don't care.
I made this point, I think, Nick and CJ, when you guys were on our show, that a lot of the Bernie movement lacks a foreign policy critique because Bernie himself lacked a foreign policy critique. And I think DSA is really a perfect example of what I was talking about there. Look, they're coming at this from a lesser evil, blue no matter who point of view. That's why they're hesitant to back Cornel West. Now, if you are a socialist organization, how it's even a question is just absurd, right? Like that lesser evil thinking should not even cross your mind. If you are actually serious about building an independent socialist power organization and you have your honorary chair running for president who has ballot access in over 40 states, it's a no-brainer. It's an open and shut case. But let's entertain this idea that, you're concerned about the fascists taking over, right? before you even get to a lesser evil consideration, you have to get to a point where you can grant yourself and your members the fact that Joe Biden is the lesser evil. And the only universe in which that is even remotely possible is one in which you have no foreign policy critique. The DSA chapters that I know of have nothing whatsoever to say about the Russia-Ukraine war. Nothing. And people who really understand what this war is about understand this as a clash for the first time in decades between capitalism and an ideological competitor on the world stage. How a socialist organization has little, if anything, to say about that, and how a socialist organization cannot recognize Joe Biden as the head of the NATO snake, right, leading this charge against an ideological competitor to capitalism, and have nothing to say about that except, well, he's the lesser evil because Trump's a fascist. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's just pathetic.
Now, I want to show you guys something, because this is not the first time that DSA has done this. This is not the first time that they betrayed their principles. That's why the new rank and file that's being tricked now, they're going to quickly realize this. Because I don't know if you guys remember this, but in 2019, DSA said they was not going to endorse the Democratic Party nominee.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
I don't remember a lot of people remember that.
Yep, I do.
Though, and this is what this article continues on. Though the DSA tweeted it will hold, even though they said it will hold firm to the pledge that after Sanders dropped out of the race by the following March, the October DSA leadership has begun circulating a pledge to campaign for Biden in the closing weeks of the election, declaring a Trump loss will be unequivocally better for the working class and our movement than a Trump re-election victory. So I'm going to ask you guys, how strong does the working class feel right now? That DSA
unbelievable
organized for Joe Biden. Yeah. And this is right after they said they wasn't going to endorse anyone other than Bernie Sanders, unless Bernie Sanders won the election. So this is the hottest, the most recent one. And then we can get to the last story. This came out today because Dr. Cornell West is exposing a lot of these fake progressives, the fake socialists who now loyal to the Democratic Party, and said Cornel West bid prompts worries from progressives. I just wish he wasn't doing it. I just wish he wasn't running as an outside third-party option, because it exposes me. Remember, CJ, how when Dr. Cornel West first ran as the People's Party candidate, and they were like, if only you ran as a Green Party candidate, then I would support you. Then Dr. Cornel West decided to do that, and I was like, oh, man, I really wish he didn't do that.
Right,
I really wish he wasn't challenging Biden, because that put them in an awkward position.
Well, you know, they got what they asked for, and they obviously weren't serious about it, and so they shouldn't have asked for it, because if Cornell stayed on the People's Party, he'd be mostly out of their way, since they wouldn't have gotten the ballot access, right? So they sort of bluffed their way into a pickle here.
I'll even go just add in just my opinion in this, and look, it's just what I've observed when I started in 2017. You know, we used to cover a lot of these activists and protests, and I said this before on the show, but looking back at it now, they never believed in anything they said. All these DSA groups, all these social justice groups, they never believed in it. Okay, you want to see real activists? These are the dauntless few. There's people like Jose Vega, Rome, Misty Winston, and again, I know you guys have interviewed a handful of other powerful individuals, but see, the thing is, all those individuals have been vilified by the establishment, vilified by the quote-unquote more liberal establishment people who are in charge of those organizations. But all these groups that I covered, all these DSA people, all these people saying, oh, Cornel West, you should have done this and that, and now they're being called out. Well, you know what? They never believed in it, okay? That's the whole thing about the Bernie Sanders movement. At the end of the day, while it did inspire some people, it inspired me to get involved in politics and do something like this. Vast majority of people was there to enrich themselves and to more or less create a big lie for the Democratic Party to remain relevant even after the Bernie Sanders campaign. So this whole idea of DSA acting like this, or all these pundits being shocked about or scared about Cornel West running as a third-party candidate, quit with your fear tactics, because it's not going to work. In fact, this is going to double my effort to vote for Dr. Cornel West. And if I'm not going to vote for Cornel West, then I'll vote for Libertarian. If I can't vote for Libertarian, I'm going to vote independent. And if I can't vote for any third party, I'm going to write somebody's name in. And if you're not going to let me vote, well, then guess what? I'm not going to vote. I'm going to live rent free in these people's heads. We got to push back at these. We got to push back at these bastards, and we can't be polite. Because if they're going to say, "Oh, Cornel West, don't run," well, then why? Because it makes you uncomfortable. Good. It tells me you're weak.
So you have people like AOC that they want nothing more for you to not have an option, kid. The
Right.
ideal situation for AOC and progressives is that you have less options on the ballot. Y'all know how absurd this take is, especially someone who considers himself on the left for socialists, which I think even they don't believe that's true anymore. Because this is AOC, and they're in this tricky position where they had this friendly relationship because Dr. Cornel West was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. He's a well-established academic, which is why he poses a unique threat, right? If it was just some random jack-off or whatever, there's some kook that's running for third party. They can't do that against Dr. Cornel West, right? So here at AOC, I think he has a very long record of service and academic thought leadership. I think just right now, given the Electoral College, it's very difficult to square the very real threat of a Republican presidency. AOC,
Given
do
the
you
Electoral
realize
College, right?
that the doomsday clock is closer to midnight than it's ever been? Like,
who cares?
What further threat do you have than nuclear war in the developing police state that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are building with Cop City and Joe Biden's insistence of funding DHS and ICE to record levels? So doesn't that show how unserious she is? Like, what is the unique threat of Republican presidency here? So is that so important that we cancel democracy, cancel the option of having other people on the ballot, right?
Of course. And what is this
we-
hedging about? Well, right now, given the Electoral College, it's difficult to square the real threat of a Republican president. You endorsed Joe Biden a few weeks ago. So what are you doing now? It's given the Electoral College. Well, because all this talk is, look, it's a pattern in all the segments that we've been doing. All this talk is a version of, in a swing state, vote for Biden. In a safe state, do your thing. But what she even do? That's what that's code for. What she's saying there, kind of. But why? Why even bother? Why even bother doing this dance? You endorsed Joe Biden already. That's it. That's your pick for the president. I mean, that's that. You know, this is not any more complicated than that. At the end of the day,
why is the Electoral College even being brought up here?
Yeah.
So
no, because the reason she's bringing that up is because she's trying to hint to some of the progressives who maybe don't want her to shit on Cornel West. She's trying to hint to them, okay, hey, listen, the Electoral College is a problem. So if you live in New York and Biden's going to win that anyway, you can go ahead and vote for Cornel West. But if you live in Michigan, you have to pay attention because the Electoral College is such that if you vote for Cornel West there, you may tip the election to Trump, right? So it's a version of the same thing Marianne was doing earlier.
My question is, what does that even mean, though? Like, what are they implying? Because it's wise. What are you implying by that? So
no, it's a meaningless argument, and it's not going to work for much longer. I think they know that. Yeah. That's the argument that Eric Levitz was hinting at too in that piece. It's all just this. It's the final stage. These are the last breaths of a dying movement, and I think they know they're on their way out. And this is just sort of going through the motions of getting through this 2024 election.
Yeah, the point I'm making here is that, are we supposed to wait till the Electoral College be dismantled to build a third-party movement? So she said, because the state Electoral College. I'm like, so I will ask them, like, do you forecast the Electoral College being dismantled anytime soon? The answer would be no. So what you are saying is that third-party activists need to take a seat. So what I'm doing is I am breaking down the language that they are using. I'm explaining to you guys what they were actually saying to you. What she's actually saying to you is that as long as the system we have right now You guys can advocate for a third party. How is that any different from any standard liberal anti-democratic talking point?
Right.
But she dressed it up, like Kian's saying, she dressed it up in progressive language.
Right.
They're extremely anti-democratic.
Because I want to read this part here. Same article, Rep. Jim McGovern. I guess he's a prominent progressive. I don't know if I know this person as a progressive, but this article is claiming he's a progressive, I think simply because he's in a progressive caucus, and we know how that goes. So Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, a prominent member of the CPC, credited West as a thoughtful guy. McGovern has had close proximity to West over the years in Massachusetts, where the philosopher and historian taught at Harvard. But McGovern didn't mince words about his third-party bid. Quote, the stakes are too high this year, especially if Trump is the nominee, he said. Quote, I think everybody, including the most progressive elements of our country, need to protect our democracy by stopping Donald Trump and supporting Joe Biden. And this is what makes what Bernie Sanders and AOC has done in endorsing Joe Biden and endorsing him this quickly has done is made it seem like it's expected. Like progressives, what are you waiting for? You're supposed to be, endorsing Joe Biden. It's like it's just think in 2020 how reluctant it was, a tug of war to get people to bow down and vote for the lesser of two evils, and that's what Bernie Sanders endorsing them later on, and AOC maybe endorsing them even later on. What are those people who follow Bernie Sanders and AOC going to do now that they're endorsing them out the gate? You see how it's moving slower and slower to the right. But let me read you another quote by this guy, and then I'll close it up. Quote, I worry about those things because Cornell West is a very effective speaker and can be very persuasive, he said. Quote, oops, this pop-up thing, this guy here. Quote, I am not here to question his motives or bash him because I followed him for many, many years, but I just wish he wasn't doing it. And that's where that quote for this article comes from. It comes from that guy, Jim McGovern of Massachusetts.